So, a lot of you have been wondering, what do I need to do in order to have small groups and breakout sessions using Google Meet in the fall? So, I'm going to create this little tutorial for you to help you guide you into just starting the basics of how to make multiple groups while you're in Google Meet. So, the first thing you're going to want to do always is come up here and make sure that your BCPS credentials have you logged into Google Chrome so that you can access all of the Google Suite materials and access all of the things that Baltimore County pushed out to you, including Google Meet, when you're operating in this browser. So as you can see, my BCPS credentials are up here, my username at bcps.org. You also want to make sure that your sync is on so that everything gets pushed out to you by the county as far as extensions are concerned with regard to Google Chrome. So that's the first step. The second step is then obviously to go into the little Google app button, click it, and then you're going to open up a Google Meet like you always would do. You click Google Meet. And then when you click Google Meet, you're going to join or start a meeting. And remember, when you create a class, you should use your BCPS credentials to name your class, use those naming conventions. And typically that would be your username. Mine is S. Giordano. Then you're going to put your class. I'm going to call it Google Meet is the class. And then you're going to put your period, and I'm just going to put session 1. So this would be the code a typical code that you would use for your Google Meets, and that's the code name that you would want to give to your students. We want to stay away from sending out links because when you do links, you're going to have a problem with students accessing your Google Meet that may not belong there, et cetera, and there's some security issues with that. For your class, you're probably going to want to do your username, so S. Giordano, the name of the class, world history, and then the mod period 1, mod 1 would be the name that you would use. So then I'm going to continue. That's going to actually start my Google Meet class. And this is where all of your students are going to come in to your class for the first time. So let's join now. And when we join now, this information is going to pop up for you to copy joining information and also for you to add people if you want to add people to your Google Meet class. So we're just going to click out of that. And we are right now in the Google Meet course. You'll notice I can click that to see who is in the Google Meet course. I can click into the chat box to see what is being typed in the chat. I can also exit out of this, come back to the main screen. You also have options up here. Remember, you can turn off the grid view, turn it on and off, etc. There's different things you can put on here. And because I am using myself in the webcam, it is not picking up my webcam for use in Google Meet, and it may not work. Yeah, it's not going to work. So, but that's okay. So you're going to see yourself, obviously, in here, and then whichever ones of your students show up in your Google Meet are going to be in your Google class with you. So how do we do an actual breakout session or make a breakout session group? So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a new tab. So right now I'm in my Google Meet class. All of my kids are in the class with me. And you might actually want to do some of these steps before your class comes in so that just everything is ready for you because you don't want to be fumbling around with a bunch of tabs when your students are there and present with you. So, but I'm going to show you how to do it to set it up before your students get there anyway. So you're just going to come up here and you're going to open up a new tab in Google. And then you're going to do the same exact thing that you did before, which is to create a Google Meet. So right now you are simultaneously creating 2 Google Meets at the same time. This is going to be your first breakout session, or your group. So let's just name this group 1, continue, and then it's going to get ready to join. You're going to join group 1 now. Okay, so right now simultaneously I have this Google Meet open, which is where all of my students are already there. This is where I use my regular class. And then I'm going to have another place for my students to go into group 1 that I've assigned for that particular small group. Now, what's interesting about this is that your students will be in your main class, the first one that we set. Simultaneously, they will be in the other class. So what's going to happen is that they're basically just going to be in 2 different Google Meets at the same time. but they're going to be active in the second Google Meet that they jump into, which in this case is group 1, okay? I'm going to do the same thing. Let's say I'm going to set 4 groups up. I want to do 4 different small groups. So I'm going to do the same thing, open up another tab in Google, go to the apps, select Google Meet, join another meeting, and then I'm going to put in here group 2. So now I have group 1 and group 2, and you'll notice that all of these Google Meets are at the top in 3 different tabs. We're going to keep going and do the same thing. So I joined group 2. So now I have 3 active Google Meets going on at the same time. Go up to the tab. We're going to add another Google Meet, just like we've done in each separate situation. Join. And then we're going to add group 3. And then we just have to do this one more time once we join this Google Meet. So we join. And as you can see at the top, we actually have my original class where all of my students came in for the very first time. We have group number 1, we have group number 2, we have group number 3. So we're going to add one more group, new tab, because I wanted to do 4 groups, because I'm going to have 4 small groups for this particular part of my lesson. Google Meet. And then you're going to want to put the code word in again, join or start a meeting. And then we're going to do group 4. All right. So now we have group 4 and our original class. So at this time, you should actually have 5 Google Meets going on at the same time. Okay. We're going to join it. And now voila, we are now actively in 4 Google Meet sessions at the same time. So this is our original class. You're going to be able to see your students listed over here as they join you. Now, when I said earlier, you're going to want to make sure that you kind of have this ready before you're ready to use it. So what I would suggest is that you actually do what I just did for your groupings before your class even starts, have it already running, accessed, and you're joined into all of them and you have them out at the same time. Because what you're really easily going to be able to do next is you're actually going to be able to tell your students in the chat. So you can go here and you can type in the chat. Give me a second. Try to make my screen capture a little bigger. And then we're going to go into the chat down here. And in the chat, we're going to say, we're going to list the students' names, for instance, name 1. So students' names. And then you're going to say, okay, I want you to join group 1. Okay. So that's coming into the chat box. All you have to do is go into that first group. You're going to select your group, joining information, and then you're going to see that it's group 1. You literally just have to copy and paste that into the chat box in the main room. So I've assigned that group. Remember, I'm telling those students what, back to the main room, what students are in that. So the name's group 1, and then you're going to add the code. And I want group 1 to go to join code group 1. Now, what I would recommend is that you not use, I'm doing it now just to show you kind of how it might work out. So you're going to tell them to use code name group, use code name group 1. Okay, so I could do it that way. And then what's going to happen is they're going to actually go into a new Google Meet. So you're going to have to tell them, okay, guys, I want you to open up a new tab in your browser because you're going to be joining a small group called group number 1. And then they're going to open up a tab just like you did earlier where you opened a tab. So they're going to be doing this. They're going to go in while they're in your class already. They're not leaving your class. You got to make sure they understand that. And when you go into that tab, you're going to tell, when they go into that tab, they're going to open up a new Google Meet, just like you did in the previous sections. Except in this case, they're not making their own Google Meet. They're just using your access code, which is group 1, to join group 1. Okay. Now, while they're in group 1, they're also simultaneously in your main class, which is the first tab that we have open right here. So just keep in mind, you don't want anybody leaving anywhere. They're just going into another place virtually so that they can work in a small group together with other students like them, okay? You're going to want to make sure that you tell your students to mute themselves, okay, in the main room, because it could get a little confusing because you may be hearing voices in the main room, hearing voices in the group rooms, because you have all these tabs open at the same time. So make sure that they're using those online virtual protocols, and that they are muting themselves and muting their videos when appropriate. It's also probably a good idea to have them mute their video, turn their video off in certain rooms, because that can save on bandwidth and can make it easier for them to access everything, and it won't slow things down. So I'm going to put that back on, the microphone back on. So at this time, they should have been able to join your group number one, those students. Okay. Same thing for group 2, 3, and 4. Now, what I was saying before is that you might not want to use the chat box for signing groups. And again, this is going to take some pre-planning on your part. So not only should you have these tabs open and ready to go, you should have your groups already named. You should in those rooms, so that they know what group to go to and what code name to use to get into that specific Google Meet. You should also have your groups assigned, and you can do that in Schoology. And there, if you look at some of the optional PD, there are parts in the Basics Bootcamp, I believe, that show you how to set up groups in your Schoology gradebook. That's going to be really helpful to you, because you can just go right in there and you can see, okay, Johnny, Sally, and Ed are in group 1, and I know that those are the kids that are going to be assigned there. That's where your pre-planning is going to come in and setting everything up, because the next step, and why I'm saying not to use chat, is probably to list those groupings on Schoology permanently somewhere, so that they can see it and access it, and they know what the code name is for that particular group. And I made it really simple today, naming the rooms, group 1, group 2, group 3. I would recommend that you add your name, S. Giordano, or your username, and group 1, just to make sure it's more secure, so that other people from other courses and schools don't get access to it. In this case, I just use group 1. So what do we do now? So you got your group set up in Schoology. You got every kid's name on it. They know what groups they're in because it's on Schoology. And the reason I'm telling you not to do it in the chat box and to do it ahead of time on Schoology is not only to save time and make it efficient, and it's also going to make it easier for students to access and get to it whenever they need it. You're also not going to want to use the chat, because if students enter your class late, or if they enter your class after you type this stuff in, or if they get disconnected from Google Meet and have to come back in, they only see what's in the chat when they're active in Google Meet. So as soon as they leave Google Meet, all their chat is wiped clean. If they come in late, all of the stuff you put in before they got there is wiped clean. So you're really going to want to make sure that all that stuff is set up ahead of time, and that it's posted somewhere more permanently, so that they have access to it all the time. And an easy way to do that is just to, you could, for instance, share your screen and present to the students in your main class. And you can use a tab. I would use a tab in this case, because I have Schoology open, Google Chrome tab, and I'm just going to click the one that says Schoology. And then now I can actually show them in that class, hey, here's your school. I want you to go to your Schoology course. I want you to look at your this link or this folder that I set up for you for today's lesson. And in that folder are all the groups with all your names and which groups and the code names for you to join, so that you know what groups to go into if you get cut out, okay? And then when you're done doing that, obviously you can stop presenting to the students, you can come back into your classroom with your students and start setting them up to get into their other groups. So at this time, they know where they are, they know what groups they're supposed to be going to, you've given them directions, and you're going to set them free to go into their groups. Now, what's cool about this is that a lot of teachers are worried that they're not going to be able to observe their students. There's no way that you can observe your students while they're in small groups, because you're in that group with them in Google Meet at the same time that they are. So you're going to be in all these places at the same time, and you literally, just to check on group 1, you click the tab up here. Oh, look, these are what the kids are doing in group number 1. Oh, I want to check on group 4. I want to make sure they're catching up. Click to group 4. All the kids that are in group 4, you can check it in your student list. Oh, here they are. All the kids are in here. Oh, this kid Johnny is supposed to be in group 1. Let me type in the chat box, hey Johnny, move over to group 1. You're in the wrong place. Tell them how to do it. And as easily as clicking each tab, you can jump into those rooms and you can see and hear everything that's going on in those particular classes, okay? So Another thing that you're going to want to make sure that you do is that when the group activity is done, you're going to want to make sure that your students know that we're going to be all coming back to the main group to have our discussions now and to exit the other Google Meet groupings that you set up. And if you want to make sure you do that, they do that, you just go in and see who is in group number one, and then you can actually remove those students if they don't leave, because you want to make sure that you close out your other Google Meets when you're done with them, so that they are not in that by themselves unattended, or they are not, you're not leaving it open for other students for some reason of other places to get in there. And as soon as you close it, it should end access to anyone if they use the code name, which is another reason not to use the link, but to use the code name for that particular purpose. When you're all done, okay, I'm done with group one, you can end it. I'm done with group two, you can end it, right? Group three, end the call. Group four, end the call. You're getting out of all of your, and you can just get rid of the tabs. You don't need them anymore, but look, you're still in your main course with all of your students in this particular course. Now, what is going to be a little difficult to navigate is just to make sure that the different rooms are not disturbing each other by listening to everything that's going on in some of the other chats. So that's why you want to make sure that you are muting yourself as a teacher in certain places, because they're going to hear it in all the different rooms. So basically what I'm saying is make sure that you are only having your microphone on in the rooms that you want to be speaking in, okay? Because they are going to hear you in the main room if you talk, or other students if they're in the main room before they get to groups and while they're in their groups, right? So it's really important to use those protocols and make sure that you're muting and having students mute where it is appropriate, okay? Now, the last thing that you might have a question about is, so I have all my groups going on, I have everything that I need. Everybody's working on what they're supposed to be working on busily. The last question is then, well, what do we do once the groups are over? You just close everything out like I showed you a minute ago in the tabs, and you're good for the day. And one last thing, if you want to make it easier on yourself to see these rooms at the same time, one of the things you're going to want to do, so I'm going to add a group again, because remember I got rid of my groups a moment ago. So I'm just going to add one more Google Meet to show you what it looks like when you have your other groups open. So again, I'll name this group one. Try to use the naming conventions that I talked about earlier. So right now I only have the main class open and I have my first group class open, right? So I'm going to join it. Now, obviously your students are already in this room. I'm just showing you another thing that you want to keep in mind. Many of you want to keep track of what's going on in one place and another place at the same time and not have to click through tabs like I'm doing up here. Easy way to do that is just to click and hold, pull the tab out, right? And then it makes it its own window, and then you can move it to the side, which is actually going to turn it into half the screen. And then on the other side, it'll pop up, well, what do you want the other thing to be? You can click it, and there you go. Look, you have access now. You can see what's going on in the main class. You can see what's going on in group one. You can even go even farther than that and make this its own window where you just leave it and it's not separated from one side to the other. You can do the same thing here. I want to make it one window. I have my main class here, my group one here. Hey, I want to make sure my group two is up here as well, my other group. Remember I had 4 groups. Okay, so just like we had before, let's make it group 2. And obviously this would already be done. I exited out early. So now I have my group, my main class, my group 1 and my group 2. And all I have to do is pull that tab out. Oh, wow, look at that. So right now, I actually have my main class I can see, my group one I can see, my group two I can see, and you can keep going as long as you have enough room on your screen. And if you don't have enough room, you can always just minimize the tab so that you can the window so that you can see more at the same time. There are all different ways that you can do this. I'm hoping this helped. If you have any specific questions about how to do this, feel free to email me at sgiordano@bcps.org, or you can always just send me a text message if you have my phone number, or set up a Teams meeting, whatever it is, we can always get together and chat and we can go through some of this functionality. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope that you were able to get out of this something that you could use for your classes, especially as you start to engage your students in creating multiple small groups using Google Meet. Thanks for watching, and please let me know if you need anything.